Here's a thought that might make some men uncomfortable. Women aren't perfect. Shocking, right? Society often paints women as flawless, mysterious, or even untouchable in the world of dating and relationships. But the truth is, every woman has weaknesses, blind spots, and emotional triggers, and understanding them isn't about manipulation or disrespect. It's about awareness. It's about seeing how human dynamics really work so you can navigate relationships with confidence, clarity, and control. Many men spend years chasing women, trying to decode them, or wondering why things don't go the way they want. They think attraction is random, that chemistry is all luck, or that women hold some kind of secret power that men will never grasp. But here's the secret. Women's behavior is often predictable if you know where their vulnerabilities lie. Knowing these weaknesses isn't about exploitation. It's about understanding dynamics, protecting your energy, and showing up as a man who sees clearly rather than blindly following emotions. Some weaknesses are emotional, things that trigger insecurity or jealousy. Others are social, like the desire for attention or validation. Some are practical, like reliance on certain comforts or habits. When you recognize these patterns, you stop being reactive. You stop giving away your power and start influencing the dynamic subtly and naturally. This isn't about playing games. It's about presence, observation, and strategy rooted in self-confidence. Before we dive deeper, welcome to the channel. If you're here, you want more than surface-level dating advice. You want to see how attraction really works and understand what women unconsciously respond to, and what can quietly weaken their perception of you if you miss it. Today, we're uncovering the top 6 female weaknesses every man must know. Some of these may surprise you, others may feel obvious, but all of them matter if you want to interact with women in a way that commands respect, interest, and authentic attraction.By By the end of this video, you'll have a clear perspective on where women can be vulnerable, how these weaknesses influence their behavior, and what you can do to navigate interactions more intelligently. This isn't about control for the sake of control. It's about understanding human nature so that you can operate confidently, protect your boundaries, and maximize the attraction she feels naturally. 1. Emotional overreliance. Why she craves validation. One of the most common weaknesses you'll notice in women is emotional overreliance. This isn't a character flaw, it's part of how human beings, especially women, are wired. Women often seek emotional feedback, reassurance, or validation to feel secure in themselves and in their relationships. Understanding this gives you a huge advantage because it explains a lot of behaviors that men otherwise misinterpret as unpredictability or moodiness. Imagine you're talking to a woman, and she makes a subtle comment about your attention, maybe jokingly, maybe seriously, as if to test whether you're fully engaged. A man who doesn't understand emotional overreliance might panic or overcompensate. He might immediately give extra attention, explanations, or compliments to fix the moment. And when that happens, she senses the shift in your emotional energy. Suddenly, the dynamic tilts, not because you did anything wrong, but because your reaction signals insecurity. What she's really doing in these moments is seeking reassurance. Emotional overreliance manifests in small ways, repeated questions about your feelings, subtle tests to see if you care, or even social media behaviors designed to gauge your interest. Most men mistake these signals as a lack of trust or an attempt to manipulate them. In reality, she's looking for stability, consistency, and affirmation, often unconsciously. The key here is not to become her emotional crutch. You don't need to constantly feed her validation. The way to handle this is by being consistent, calm, and centered. A man who maintains his composure and doesn't overreact gives her exactly what she's unconsciously seeking, a reliable emotional anchor. She learns to trust your presence rather than needing to extract constant approval from you. When you understand emotional overreliance as a weakness, you also see the patterns that accompany it. She may become slightly clingy in uncertain moments, question your attention, or subtly gauge your reactions. Recognizing these behaviors lets you respond strategically. You stay grounded, confident, and calm without trying to appease her. That approach shifts the dynamic entirely. She doesn't need to test you as aggressively because she senses that your emotional steadiness is not easily shaken. In short, women crave validation. It's part of their emotional wiring. But your job as a man isn't to give it endlessly. It's to remain composed and consistent, showing that your stability isn't dependent on her every mood. When you do that, you naturally command respect, control the dynamic, and subtly elevate your attraction in ways most men never realize. 2. Fear of confrontation. Avoiding tough conversations. Another common weakness in women is a tendency to avoid confrontation. Many women, consciously or unconsciously, dislike direct conflict. They may shy away from difficult conversations, delay addressing issues, or use indirect ways to express dissatisfaction. This isn't about dishonesty or manipulation. It's often about maintaining harmony and avoiding emotional discomfort. But for men, understanding this tendency is critical because it affects communication, decision-making, and relationship dynamics. Women who avoid confrontation often communicate indirectly. They might drop hints, ask leading questions, or express feelings subtly instead of stating their needs clearly. For men who aren't aware of this, these signals can be confusing or misinterpreted. A seemingly small comment or a change in tone can carry more weight than it appears because she's trying to communicate without entering direct conflict. Another aspect of this weakness is that unresolved issues can linger longer than they should. When she avoids confrontation, she may bottle up frustration or dissatisfaction until it manifests in subtle behavior, passive aggressiveness, testing, or emotional withdrawal. Men who recognize this pattern can navigate interactions more effectively by noticing the signals early and staying composed. This doesn't mean you need to force a woman into confrontation or challenge her unnecessarily. The key is understanding that her avoidance is a natural tendency and that it requires patience, observation, and calm leadership. When you respond confidently, without escalating tension, she starts to feel safe expressing herself more openly. She learns that addressing issues doesn't threaten the relationship, and she may even begin to mirror your level of emotional stability. Interestingly, this weakness also reveals an opportunity for men. Women are often drawn to men who can handle tough conversations without reacting emotionally or defensively. If you can stay steady, speak clearly, and take the lead in navigating difficult topics, you demonstrate maturity, confidence, and reliability, qualities that naturally boost attraction. Ultimately, fear of confrontation is a weakness because it creates uncertainty in interactions and can lead to tests or passive behaviors. But it's also a chance to show your leadership, emotional stability, and calm presence. When you recognize this trait and respond intelligently, you can transform potential tension into deeper connection and respect, positioning yourself as the man who handles challenges with composure rather than panic. 3. Impulse decisions. Acting before thinking. One of the most noticeable weaknesses in women is a tendency to act on impulse. This doesn't mean women are irrational or irresponsible. It's part of how emotions can influence decision-making. Many women make choices quickly based on feelings, excitement, or social pressures without fully thinking through the consequences. For men, understanding this is important because it explains behaviors that might otherwise seem inconsistent or frustrating. Impulsive actions can appear in multiple areas: spending money, changing plans, reacting emotionally in conversations, or making commitments without fully considering the outcomes. These behaviors are often fueled by emotion rather than logic, which can lead to situations that surprise or challenge the men involved. For example, a woman might suddenly change her mind about plans, express frustration over something minor, or make a spontaneous social decision that affects your interaction. Men who see this as a personal attack or try to overcorrect often create unnecessary tension. Impulse-driven behavior also shows up in communication. Quick responses filled with emotion, social media reactions, or sudden mood shifts are often not reflections of true intent but of momentary feelings. Understanding that these actions are natural emotional reactions rather than calculated moves allows a man to stay composed and respond intelligently rather than reacting with irritation or overcompensation. Recognizing this weakness gives men an edge. When you understand that emotions can drive sudden decisions, you can remain steady and not get drawn into drama. You can allow the moment to pass without taking it personally, knowing that her reaction is temporary and often unrelated to you. This calm, composed response also signals strength and emotional stability, which naturally enhances attraction. Additionally, impulse-driven behavior can be an opportunity. Women are often drawn to men who provide stability and thoughtful consideration in contrast to emotional impulsivity. By maintaining clarity, demonstrating foresight, and managing your own reactions, you naturally create a sense of security that women unconsciously appreciate. In short, impulse decisions are a weakness because they can lead to unpredictability and emotional testing. But for men who understand this pattern, it's also a chance to lead subtly, remain calm, and establish trust. When you don't get pulled into every emotional wave, you create contrast and stability, two things women are naturally drawn to, even if they don't consciously realize it. 4. Overthinking. Letting doubts control her actions. Overthinking is one of the most common weaknesses women display, and it often affects how they interact with men. Women tend to analyze situations, conversations, and behaviors far more deeply than necessary, replaying interactions in their minds and imagining all possible outcomes. This isn't inherently bad. It comes from a desire to understand and anticipate, but it can create self-doubt, indecision, and even emotional tension that impacts their behavior toward you. When a woman overthinks, small issues can become bigger in her mind than they actually are. A delayed response to a message, a casual comment, or a subtle change in tone might spiral into questions like, "Does he still like me?" or "Did I say something wrong?" Men who misinterpret this overthinking often respond by trying to reassure her constantly, explaining themselves, or overcompensating. This, in turn, feeds into the cycle, making her doubt and worry more while giving away your power. Another side of overthinking is indecision. She might hesitate on plans, avoid making clear commitments, or ask repeated questions to gain certainty. Many men find this frustrating because it can feel like a lack of clarity or even testing. But in reality, overthinking is a mental habit, not a conscious effort to undermine you. Recognizing it helps you respond differently, with patience, calm, and consistent behavior. Overthinking can also create opportunities. Women are often drawn to men who can provide clarity and stability without pressure. When you stay confident, composed, and decisive, you act as a natural anchor to her swirling thoughts. She may overanalyze less simply because your presence and behavior signal reliability and self-assurance. Men who understand this weakness know not to chase every imagined concern she raises. They understand that overthinking is natural and that patience, steadiness, and clear boundaries speak louder than words. By maintaining composure and avoiding unnecessary explanations or defenses, you subtly guide the interaction and maintain attraction.I. In short, overthinking is a female weakness because it can create unnecessary tension and testing in relationships. But for men who are aware, it's an opportunity to stand out by being grounded, confident, and emotionally consistent, qualities that naturally draw her in and keep her invested without you having to chase. 5. Need for attention. Subtle ways she seeks it. A woman's need for attention is one of the most consistent patterns you'll notice, and it's important for men to understand it. This doesn't mean she's shallow or manipulative, it's simply a part of human behavior. Attention is a form of emotional currency, and women often seek it to feel valued, secure, and connected. Recognizing this weakness helps you navigate interactions without overextending yourself or losing your center. Consider this scenario. You're texting a woman, and she sends a flirty or teasing message that seems designed to grab your focus. Many men react automatically, pouring in validation, compliments, or rapid responses to prove their interest. What they don't realize is that by doing this, they're feeding a dynamic where they're constantly responding to her emotional cues instead of maintaining their own balance. The more attention you give in this reactive way, the more she learns to test and demand it. Women often seek attention in subtle ways, not just overtly. It could be sharing a personal story expecting a reaction, posting on social media to see who engages, or making playful challenges to gauge your interest. These behaviors aren't about manipulation, they're instinctive ways to measure connection and gauge emotional investment. Men who understand this respond differently. They notice the cues but don't let them control their energy. The key is to give attention intentionally rather than reactively. When she seeks it, you respond in a measured, confident way that shows interest without appearing needy. You acknowledge her, engage with presence, but don't overcompensate or constantly chase reassurance. That creates a dynamic where she feels valued but also respects your independence. Understanding this weakness also allows men to set boundaries naturally. If you recognize when attention-seeking behavior is escalating, you can respond with calm consistency or redirect focus to shared goals, shared humor, or meaningful conversation. By doing this, you demonstrate emotional maturity and subtly teach her that respect and connection are earned, not demanded. In short, women's need for attention is a weakness because it can create dependency on external validation, but it's also an opportunity for men. By staying grounded, measured, and intentional in your engagement, you maintain control of the interaction, increase her attraction, and demonstrate the kind of confidence that women naturally gravitate toward. 6. Weakness for confidence. Why strong men dominate attraction. If there's one thing almost every woman responds to, it's confidence. This is not arrogance, posturing, or showing off, it's genuine self-assuredness. A woman's weakness for confident men is one of the most powerful and consistent patterns you'll notice in dating and relationships. It's a weakness because it often overrides other preferences, insecurities, or judgments she might have. Understanding this gives men a huge advantage, but only if they learn to embody it authentically. Many men misunderstand confidence. They think it's about talking louder, dominating conversations, or performing impressive feats. Real confidence is subtle. It shows up in posture, tone, decision-making, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. Women sense this immediately. Even in moments of tension, a man who remains grounded communicates a kind of stability and leadership that draws attraction effortlessly. A common mistake men make is trying to act confident without being grounded. Fake confidence is easy to spot. It often comes across as overcompensation, bragging, interrupting, or constantly seeking approval. When women sense this, it triggers skepticism rather than attraction. True confidence, on the other hand, is quiet but powerful. It's reflected in how you handle challenges, make decisions, and interact without needing constant validation. Here's some constructive advice for men. Reflect on how you respond under pressure. Are you reactive, defensive, or over-explaining yourself when tested? Or do you stay steady, calm, and intentional? The difference between these behaviors is what separates men who naturally command attraction from those who struggle. Confidence also interacts with other female weaknesses we've discussed. Emotional over-reliance, need for attention, jealousy, all of these are mitigated when a man demonstrates unwavering self-assurance. She may test you, pull back, or push boundaries, but when she senses genuine confidence, these behaviors often diminish or even reverse. She feels drawn to your steadiness rather than trying to control or manipulate the dynamic. In essence, women have a weakness for men who are secure in themselves because it provides a sense of safety, admiration, and emotional stability. It's a weakness that can make a man far more influential in interactions than any charm, gift, or strategy ever could. Take this seriously. Confidence is not optional. If you want to dominate attraction, cultivate real self-assurance, and don't let fear, doubt, or overthinking dilute it. Here's a statement that might make some men stop and think. Understanding female weaknesses doesn't make you manipulative, it makes you aware. Women, like all humans, have emotional patterns, blind spots, and vulnerabilities. The men who succeed are the ones who recognize these patterns and respond with confidence, patience, and clarity, rather than reacting impulsively or trying to control them. From emotional over-reliance to jealousy triggers, these weaknesses reveal where women seek stability, reassurance, and leadership, even if they don't consciously admit it. When you understand them, you stop giving away your power by over-explaining, chasing validation, or reacting to every mood shift. You stay grounded, composed, and intentional, and that presence naturally elevates attraction. Some of these weaknesses, like the need for attention or overthinking, may feel like challenges, but they're also opportunities. They show you where a woman's behavior is influenced by emotion rather than reason, giving you the chance to respond thoughtfully instead of reactively. And the difference between reacting and responding is what separates average men from those who command respect and desire effortlessly. I want to hear from you. Which of these weaknesses have you noticed in women around you? How did you react, and what did you learn from those experiences? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read them, and I engage with you directly. Your insights not only help you reflect but also help others in the community see these patterns more clearly. Remember this: knowledge without application is useless. Recognizing these weaknesses gives you an edge, but applying calm, confident, and grounded responses is what turns awareness into real attraction. Women are not perfect, and neither are men, but understanding human nature puts you in a position where you can interact intelligently, protect your energy, and naturally elevate your presence in any relationship.